Matthew, welcome to the show.
Nick, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, really excited to have you on today. Would you mind giving the listeners the 411 on who you are and what you're going to bring to the show today?
Sure. I'm the founder, chief executive officer, head chef, and chief bottle washer of QuantmRE. And what we do is we help homeowners solve one of the major problems that they have, which is accessing the equity in their homes without taking on more debt.
All right, that was a mouthful, but I think it's going to be one we can unpack today. I'm excited to get into it. Would you tell us the story of how you got there? You know, I would imagine you've fill us in on your background and who you are and your entrepreneurial journey, and just kind of how you got to the moment that you wanted to start the business you have today.
Well, like most things, it's sort of being in the right place at the right time, and sort of recognizing that, hang on, there's something in this. So I'm originally from the UK, and I moved over here about 7.5, 8 years ago. And one of the first things I did was to set up a real estate crowdfunding company, because we were just hot on the heels of the Jobs Act, which opened up the ability for people to advertise deals online, which they couldn't do previously. So it really gave birth to the whole crowdfunding and online investing space. So I was at a crowdfunding conference up in the Bay Area, and one of the speakers there was talking about this new financial instrument where people could unlock some of the equity in their homes, but they didn't have to borrow money because there were investors that were interested in participating in some of the equity upside. So what it really meant was that the homeowners who had equity and wanted to get their hands on it but didn't want to borrow money, this was a solution. So immediately that caught my interest, and then the deeper I sort of dug into it, then obviously there were a few details and a few complications, and it was still quite a young product. But wind the clock forward about 3 years. So back in December 18, we found a way to solve many of the problems associated with what the product is, how it can be launched, how it can be funded and capitalized and traded. And we launched QuantmRE.
So how about before that, back in the UK, what was your job skills back then?
I was primarily a swimwear model for most of. No, you can cut that bit out the edits. I'm actually that's right. That was my vague attempt at humor there. Actually, no. So I
didn't know which way to take it, so that's fine.
No, that's fine. You did very well. It's like yes. Well, perhaps you could. Yes, I can only see the top half. But I started off life as a stockbroker in the late 80s, and I was broking the Far East markets: Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, and Thailand. And so that was my sort of launch into the financial world. And really, was then we split up and formed a small corporate finance company. And funnily enough, one of the people that we ended up being very close to was Sir Richard Branson. We ended up organizing the Global Challenger, which is the round the world balloon trip attempt for him, because one of the investments that we had was a hot air balloon company owned by Per Lindstrand. So we were the guys that suggested to Sir Richard that he fly around the world in a hot air balloon. We then became, pretty good friends with him and got involved with many of his projects going forwards. Virgin Clothing, Virgin Cosmetics, V2 Music. And that really took me through to the late 90s. And then after that, I left and set up a number of companies focused on technology and finance. In lending, I was involved in telecommunications, had operations in 3 countries, in the UK, Australia, and India, of all places. And so there was very much a focus on platforms. We were one of the first companies to develop internet-based infrastructure back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So, my background is very much over the last 20 something years, entrepreneurial, but based on finance, technology, and using platforms to be able to deliver services to many people.
Well, I have a hard time believing you were in the right place at the right time, all those times.
Oh no, that was just that particular crowdfunding conference. So
Okay.
most of the time it's just okay, it doesn't always work.
Yeah. So to me, it sounds like you're a serial entrepreneur as well. It seems like something about it just drives you, right? It's about starting businesses and.
Well, yeah, but again, it's not. There is a cadence, so there is method to the madness. So if you look, we're talking about over a 20 to 25 year, actually, 30-year period now, if you include the last few years in the US. So. A relatively limited number of companies, but very much in the same sort of space. So, really just building on the knowledge that I'd learned from previous, exercises or activities. So, what one tends to try and avoid is hopping around from one thing to another. So, if you're building platforms or you're building, a company that is really built on the foundations of other ventures that you've had, I think that's a good way of moving forward, because you tend to learn more, and if you can stay in the same sort of space, you end up with a much greater chance of becoming a subject matter expert rather than simply trying to learn a new industry right from the very beginning.
Do you think a lot of your experiences have definitely brought you to where you are today?
Yeah, no, I was talking to someone else about this recently, and what we're doing at Quantum, we've been working on this for 4 years almost. And it's a complex construct which involves homeowners on one side, investors on another side, blockchain technology. We're creating tokenized marketplaces or a tokenized marketplace. So what we're doing is we're really sort of stretching the boundaries of our knowledge and experience in securities and in technology. And marketing, and also financial engineering. So, all of those things are things that I had a pretty solid foundation over the last, really for most of my career. So what we're doing today is absolutely built on everything that I've built in the past.
And have you found yourself that you're usually the lead on these projects, or do you bring on partners? What's your
there's
experience been
areas. So
there?
you have I like to work on the basis that the vision is mine. So this, because I see it very clearly, and it still excites me, tremendously every day. So the vision of what I want QuantmRE to be is mine. But there are many, many areas, many moving parts where I don't have the expertise even to be able to claim ownership of that. I know what I need to achieve, and I know where we need to be and how we need to do it, in the sense that we need to be operating in a very compliant way, in a way that gives us a long-term business. But I very much rely on people that have that specific sector knowledge, or those contacts, or that experience. One cannot build an operation like this on one's own. One can drive it, but I'm very happy and blessed to have some incredibly smart people working with me.
So your other companies, when it was ready to move on from those companies, did you take them public? Did you sell
No,
them
there
privately?
were relatively small private companies. So I had a telecoms company that was sold. There were other companies that came to their natural life, the end of their natural life. So in other words, we had a trading company that was trading environmental assets, and the market went through this sort of perfect parabola. So at that point, it was time that there was no longer that market opportunity. Some were sold, some naturally, as I say, came to the end of their lifespan, and some just plain didn't work. So there's a couple of them that just I still think about today, thinking, that wasn't my smartest move.
And what's the vision for Quantum as far as that goes? What's the end game?
Well, I think we don't have a particular target date or exit strategy in mind, because we know that what we're building here will probably have significant value to a number of different institutions, whether they be banks or finance houses. So this isn't being built with a particular end game as such. We're building quantum because it's something that we really believe in. It's something that's incredibly exciting to build, because what we're doing is we are creating liquidity for a $23 trillion asset class. So we're making home equity accessible, investable, and tradable. Now, that's never been done. So we're not buying houses and trying to get investors. We've developed a relatively new financial instrument, which is in use by many other companies, and about $1 billion this year will probably go into that. But we're using that instrument to enable homeowners to access their equity without taking on more debt. And that's something that is very helpful, very useful, and solves a real problem. So the fact that we're working in an area that is not a sunset industry, it is about to, grow very, very quickly. It solves a big problem. The timing is just right. And also we're working with some very exciting new technologies and really pushing the boundaries both in trading and investments and all of the things that still make us leap out of bed in the morning with excitement to see how we can build something new today.
A lot of times on the show we get more into the personal story and not so much pushing the product or anything like that, but I find it very intriguing what your business and your company does. So I'm going to kind of dig into it with you here. So let's just say I have 100,000 equity in my house and I reach out to your company. What happens next? Like how does it work?
Well, sure. Okay. So we have, let's say that you've got $1 million property. Okay. So that's the value of your home. And just so that it works for us.
Sure. Easy numbers. Yep.
Let's say you've got a $500,000 mortgage. So you've been paying off your mortgage. Your house has appreciated in value significantly in the last few years. So that's why you've got $500,000 worth of equity. So from your perspective, and this is a story that is familiar to millions of people, there's nearly 18 million people have more than 50% equity in their homes. So you're sitting there and you're thinking, okay, how do I get my hands on this? Because I don't want to borrow money, or maybe there's been some issues with your employment, or maybe your credit card usage has gone up, so your credit score has gone down and you don't qualify. So the important thing is we are investors. Okay, we're not lenders. So we're not going to lend you money. We're going to give you a cash lump sum in exchange for a share of the potential appreciation of your home. So the way we get paid is when you sell your home, which can be any time in the next 30 years, you would effectively give us back the investment that we gave you, and we would have a share of the increase in value of your property. And to give you some round numbers, there are many different flavors of agreements. Some last for 10 years, some last for 30 years. But if I give you a 10-year example, it's really just a case of us effectively buying into the potential appreciation of your home at a discount. So if you wanted to access $100,000, which is 10% of the current value of your home, then we would write you a check for $100,000, and in exchange for that, your agreement would say when you sell your home, which can be any time in the next 10 years, or if you decide to buy back the agreement, then we would be entitled to 16% of the value of your home when you sell it at that time. So whatever you sell your house for, 16% of the value of that home, of that sales price, goes to us. And we're really taking a bet on the fact that your house isn't going to collapse in value, or over that period of time. If it does go down, then we potentially could lose money. If it goes up, we'll both do quite well. But in the meantime, you get that $100,000. There's no monthly payments, there's no interest, there's no loans. It doesn't appear as debt. You can use it to pay off credit card debt, to pay off a mortgage if you want to, refurbish your house, anything that you want to spend the money on.
Okay, take me through the flip side. I want to go onto your website and invest. I want to go ahead and put some of my money towards the crowdfunding to buy some of these contracts. Do I have access to pick the market that I want to?
Yes, you do. And we are weeks away from launching this. So it's been 4 years in the making.
Wow.
And there's been an enormous amount of technological development outside of us. So we couldn't launch this 3 or 4 years ago. We tried, but the blockchain just wasn't up to it. The securities regulations didn't understand what blockchain was. So there was a lot of infrastructure catch up that needed to happen so that we could create these investments in a compliant way. But to answer your question, the site's up and running. You can register an account. You will be able to see a whole range of different fractionalized home equity agreements in different states, in different municipal areas, different amounts. And when I say fractionalized, it means that you'll be able to buy a small amount of each one of these home equity agreements and have the full benefit of that agreement. So your investment minimum is going to be far lower than it would be if you wanted to take on the entire agreement. And typically minimum investments are around the $250 mark. So we're not live yet. The platform's there. We're just a few weeks away from having the first few home equity agreements, and that will be the first time ever that anyone has taken this type of agreement and made it available to investors.
And you're using the blockchain for the contracts? Is that what you're using?
We're using the blockchain to keep track of these individual fractions of each agreement. So what the blockchain enables us to do is, in a very efficient way and in a way that is able to be scrutinized at the deepest level, we take a home equity agreement, chop it up into potentially thousands of different little pieces. Each one of those pieces represents a share of the benefit of that agreement. And then we use the blockchain to keep track of what that agreement is, who owns it, who bought it, who sold it, when did the transaction happen, and also a number of other characteristics or parameters that are associated with that contract. What does the agreement look like? Where is the house? How many bedrooms does it have? Where are the photographs? Where are the title deeds? And where is the lien held? So all of that information is attached to each one of those tokens. So if you're buying or selling a fraction of that home equity agreement, you can keep track of exactly what it is you're buying and what the history is. And it also allows us to make sure that we can enable those trades to happen in a very compliant way.
And then beyond the initial crowdfunding, are you suggesting that people could sell their share of it later on down the road?
That's absolutely what the platform has been designed to do. So not only can you buy fractions, you are also, or will also, be able to put your tokens or your home equity agreement fractions up for sale. And again, that's going to be happening in the first quarter of next year. So that means from a regulatory compliant way, you will be able to trade these assets. You'll be able to buy them and sell them. And again, there are a few regulatory hurdles that we have to jump through or jump over. But the stage is set, and so we're targeting Q1 of next year for people to be actively able to buy and sell interests in the equity in single family homes on our platform.
And how do you plan on getting the word out?
Well, we've been around for a number of years, and we're already have a very sort of, I wouldn't say significant, but it's a fairly large social media presence. So from a homeowner's perspective, we work directly with the consumer. So we have direct to consumer advertising campaigns on Facebook and the other social media platforms. And that drives homeowners to our site. From an investment perspective, we're engaging the blockchain or the Algorand community. So, this is one of the very first real estate or very early real estate use cases for the Algorand blockchain. So there's a lot of interest around what we're doing in the Algorand community. In addition to that, we already have almost 700 investors from a previous crowdfunding round that we went through last year on Republic. And all of those investors, I think, are very interested in what we're doing on the real estate investment side. And our plan on the investment side is really just to scale up that direct-to-consumer marketing, leveraging all of those relationships.
So with all that being said, do you see your company just taking away the is it another option for a homeowner?
Yes.
Or do you think it's a better option, so it's really going to really just kind of wreck the way that people do their second lines of mortgages right now?
Well, I think it's for some people. I mean, most of our customers are people that don't qualify for a second mortgage or a home equity line of credit, or simply don't want one. So what we're doing is we're addressing a market that is underserved or not served at the moment. So if you, again, go back to that example, let's say you're sitting on your $500,000 of home equity and you've been offered a rate by the bank, or maybe you just can't get someone to offer you a rate because it may be that your credit score has decayed to the point where you're no longer able to get offers, then we are a solution for that. But there are other people at the other end of the spectrum who see home equity as an asset. So rather than being directly connected to it as their home, they say, well, what am I doing with $500,000 in one asset? I'm breaking all the rules of investment. I've got all of my eggs in one basket. It doesn't generate any cash flow. I haven't got any liquidity. I'm not in control of whether it goes up or down because that's at the whim of the market. So I want to access some of that equity and put it into another type of investment where I've got more control. So it's not designed to replace or compete head on with lending, because for some people, borrowing money is the right answer, but it's very much a parallel strategy or an alternative strategy for people that maybe can't borrow money or simply don't want to borrow money.
So somebody who thinks they can take the 500,000 out and in the end make more than the 6% plus the equity that ends up in the investment in the end, they feel like they can take that money and make more than it would be when they go to sell their house. Is that who would do that?
If that's the case, yes, in that situation, there are people that see many investment opportunities where the equity in their home would be an ideal source of capital. And the reason for that is because there aren't any monthly payments associated with it. So, if the investment doesn't perform in the timelines that they are hoping, they're not suddenly finding themselves in a cash flow deficit situation where they're having to support that loan. They can just afford to wait. So, again, it's horses for courses. For most of our customers, they're looking to solve a financial problem. For some of our customers, it's an opportunity to diversify out of their home equity.
All right. So I think we did a pretty good job of explaining that. It's definitely, yes. Yeah, we did. I think you did a great job of bringing to light what it is.
Thank you.
It's definitely one of those things that is a future item. Like it's one of those things that you wouldn't see 5 years ago or 10 years ago. It's with the technology coming out that it's a cutting item. I think it's something that you're going to see more things that take advantage of the blockchain and the way that it can hold the contracts, like what you're talking about. And really, I think it's one of those things that I think we'll look back on this conversation in a few years and be like, wow, we were way ahead of the curve of talking about it now. Once I think the company comes out, I think there's going to be a demand for it. I really
Yes,
believe that.
and we have been originating home equity agreements for homeowners for the last 2 years. In fact, more than that. So we've already provided or accessed millions of dollars of funding for homeowners. So the investment side is something that's taken a little bit longer to bake for because there are more moving parts. But we all are already, working. We have hundreds of customers working with us at various stages of discussion right now. So the good news is it's not quite as bleeding edge as it was a few years ago. I'm pleased to hear that you still think it's cutting edge, which is great, but it's not too esoteric that I think it will be a mainstream financial product,
Right.
in the very near future.
Yeah, I do too. And that's why I say cutting edge, because I don't think we've seen anything in the mainstream like this. And there's a lot of people talking about, like you said, the underserved part of it is the people that can't, because their credit has whatever reason taken a toll, so they can't access it. So this helps them. But there's also the people that have a lot of equity in their house that think that they can take that money and use it in different investments too, but they don't necessarily want to take a loan out, because then there's monthly payments and everything else. And, they may have made a lot of payments towards that. So they felt like, boy, I just went ahead and made extra payments for the last 10 years. Like, the last thing I want to do is take a second mortgage out now.
Absolutely.
But it would be different if somebody was like, hey, we've got this deal on the side for you that, we'll write you one big check and we'll catch up when you sell your house. Like, I don't know. I think it's pretty brilliant, to be honest with you.
Well, it's very kind, and it has been around. As I said, it's something that we stumbled across a number of years ago. Over the last few years, the actual construct of the agreement has developed. It has become simpler from a consumer or a homeowner's perspective. It has become more ubiquitous. In other words, more and more people are now using it. And as I said, over $1 billion this year will go into these types of home equity agreements. So you've got adoption, you've got interest from funding sources. It is way, way, way away from being a mainstream product, though. But that's what's exciting about it, because it does solve a problem. It is in a massive it's a massive asset class, so there is plenty of room for it to grow, and there are plenty of room for other people to come in and start doing something similar to us. And that's all for the good, because it helps educate the homeowner population that there are other options, and you don't have to be stuck with all of that dead equity.
Now, take us through when you came up with the idea and you had this kind of moment when you were at the convention and you saw this. So, like, from there till now, like, what was the mindset of being able to get the funding to bring this idea to light? Like, did you rely on past relationships that you had built, or what was it that really has worked in the last 4 to 5 years to make this come to where you're just a few weeks out from launching it?
I think the biggest factor is that it is a business that solves a real problem. So if it was a nice to have, or if it was an interesting use of the blockchain, or some other factor, then we would not have been able to maintain the momentum over the last 4 years. It's because it really is a very elegant and simple way of solving a problem that affects millions of people. And that problem is getting worse, because, as one of the results that we've seen of COVID, or the pandemic generally, is that the economy is now far more difficult for certain sectors than it was 2 or 3 years ago. So even though some of those people may be seeing significant house price appreciation, they're still finding it very difficult on a day-to-day basis, to pay their bills. So one of the critical success factors is what we're doing is something that is of interest and has meaning to a very large potential customer base. And in addition to that, we were able to solve the problem which prevented or slowed down the possibility of investment capital coming in from institutions. And I think everything else really is based on that foundation. And the fact that we are developing the platform, that we're able to um, explain what we're doing and raise capital. So to answer your question about capital, I obviously had contacts in the UK, but had no contacts at all in the US when I moved over. So everything we did really had to stand on its own 2 feet, in the sense that the business model, we raised money from people that I had met, who believed and still do believe in what we're doing. So the initial fundraising was from friends and people that saw the vision and came in early and funded it. We then went on to a crowdfunding campaign and raised some extra capital there and brought in some more investors. And then bit by bit, as you build up the investor base and you deliver what you say you're going to deliver. So we are fortunate in the sense that, we have been able to meet some of our goals, or meet all of our goals that we said that we would deliver. And that helps build credibility. And we're at the point now where there's a significant amount of momentum and energy, and people can see what we're doing, and it's less of a challenge for them to be able to make that leap into, well, where are you going to be in 3 to 5 years.
And what about you personally? Over the last 30 years, all the different businesses, like what keeps you going?
Well, again, I think it's the creativity. It's I think it is the belief in the idea. It is the true belief that what we're doing, or what I'm doing, is something that I really want to do, and because of that, nothing stops you. I mean, you have days when you feel you're banging your head against the wall, but ultimately inside you, that there is this sense of inevitability, and that's the thing that does make me smile in the mornings. I know that this is going to work. I know that this is going to be a success, because it's inevitable. I am going to make that successful. And it's the same with all the other businesses. It wasn't a case where I'm trying to convince myself to do this. You truly believe it. And if you truly believe in your heart of hearts that this is going to be a success, then it's impossible for it not to be, because you will always find a way round whatever objection or road bump you hit. And the most amazing thing is the ability for you to do something if you truly believe in it. So I'm very lucky to have found something that still excites me massively today. And because of that, you get endless energy to be able to make it move forward.
And Matthew, where can people find out more about you or more about Quantum?
Well, everything's on our website, which is QuantmRE, QuantmRE.com. So we have a calculator there, so you can find out how much home equity you can unlock. We have all sorts of other resources and downloadable information to give you more of a background about how these home equity agreements work. And we have telephone numbers. So, if you want to speak to one of us, there's a number there. So please call us.
Now it's time we get to solve the equation to Matthew's success. Matthew, are you ready for 7 rapid fire questions?
I think so. Yes. Gosh.
Okay. Great. Best seminar or teaching that you've ever been to?
I think really when I was living in the UK, I came over to San Jose for, I think it was Brendan Burchard. It was just it's something I would never normally go to. And it was one of these interesting seminars about, your ability to change your mindset, because being, from the UK, this is something that we don't really talk about. It's one of those things that, stiff upper lip and all that sort of stuff. So it was a seminar that really just brought people from all sorts of different walks of life. And there was this incredible positivity, and people were doing all sorts of really good things in different fields. So it was one of these sort of expert conferences where It was just generally a very good 2 or 3 days, and this was probably about 9 or 10 years ago. But that sense of, you know, of can do still, still resonates.
Favorite item you've bought recently under $100?
I would say a Black and Decker coffee maker with a which finally is able to make coffee that tastes the way that I want it to. I don't know what it is with. It's just a very simple drip machine, but it's just well built, and it gives me endless delight every morning as the hot coffee comes out.
Name an idol or hero of yours that you've met in person.
I would say Buzz Aldrin, because when we were doing the hot air balloon challenge for Sir Richard, there was a launch party, and a certain Mr. Buzz Aldrin was there, and I was just completely dumbstruck, and still remember sitting next to him, as if I were a deer caught in the headlights of an oncoming car. Just resisting the temptation to actually touch him to see if he was real. That was a great night. But just being around Richard Branson as well for a few years, just being behind closed doors and just seeing that the guy was real, and everything that he did was real. It wasn't for the cameras. So those are, again, things that teach you that there is stuff out there that really can happen.
Favorite book to give as a gift?
Jonathan Livingston's Seagull, because it's short. In other words, if I was going to give War and Peace or something like that, I'd. But Jonathan Livingston's Seagull is one of those books that is. It's short. It's interesting. It's the sort of thing that you can remember, and it's a very interesting story. It's a bit of a fable. So it's not heavy. It's not, one doesn't have to sort of get indigestion to read it.
Something you do every morning?
I walk the dog. I know it sounds trite, but I do feel terribly upset if I don't have a chance to do that, because, it's not about the dog. It's about me clearing my mind. And where we are, it's quite a rural area. And so, it's a good 25-minute, half an hour walk. I'm looking forward to the snow as well, so I can put my new jacket on.
What part of the States are you in?
Just north of Salt Lake City.
Very nice. And your personal mantra or favorite quote?
I think it's something to do with, stop trying to look too far for what you're looking for, because the chances are it's, right in front of you. You just can't see it. Because it's probably the opposite to what you thought it was. So I haven't sort of finessed it into a phrase that can be easily articulated or remembered, but the general gist of it is, if you're searching for something, the chances are it's right in front of you. You're just not looking in the right place.
And place to go to decompress and reset?
I would say just the mountains around here. They have these fantastic off-road tracks, and the best way, again, the way I used to love decompressing was flying a helicopter, but I haven't done that for a while. So it's a two-part answer. The first part is flying helicopters. You cannot think about anything else other than flying a helicopter. Now, it's the same thing. If I really want to decompress and sort of take a bit of time, I'll go for a drive on some of the tracks up in the mountains. So it's 15 minutes away. But you've got to concentrate. Otherwise, you'll fall off the edge. And then, there's all sorts of paperwork. So because of that, it takes your mind off stuff. So the way to relax, I've found, is do something that is so absorbing that you cannot possibly think, what are you going to have for dinner, or have you responded to that email? And that is the most relaxing, way of disconnecting yourself from the moving parts of your day-to-day business.
Matthew, thank you so much for being on the Business Equation today. We wish you nothing but more success. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nick. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you for having me on.